Hey everyone, here Chris Carter on the Monday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got to address something, Steelers Nation, because some of y'all are losing y'all minds, and I'm here to provide a reality check on the quarterback situation. We'll do that, answer some calls, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. All right, Steelers fans, we got to dig into a few things here. Rookie camp starts at the end of the week. We will get you prepared through that throughout the rest of the week. There's things to be excited about. We'll see how that plays out. But I wanted to address something that I sort of came across over the weekend in my weekend film study article that I wrote for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on Will Howard, the Steelers drafted quarterback from Ohio State, the good and bad traits that he displayed, and what might be the things that translate well to the NFL and the things that he will, need to work on more. And the main thing that I focused on was like, look, this guy's got size, he's got speed, he's got arm strength, his deep ball is impressive. He can make, good reads at the line of scrimmage when it comes to pre-snap reads. But one thing that happens is that his post-snap reads aren't always the best, and he can often get fooled into, predictable situations, which are things that NFL teams will tee off on. And, his ability to make those type of adjustments in a play need to be shown a little bit more, which is why he's a 6th-round pick. I thought it was a pretty reasonable take on where Will Howard is and his trajectory and is the ceiling that he could get to, or the way that he could grow into being a viable quarterback for the Steelers in the future. Some people didn't think that, because some people got really excited about watching some highlights on YouTube and started thinking that Will Howard is the second coming and that he's ready to be the franchise quarterback. You need to throw him in right now. He's just going to be the guy. Stop worrying about it. And I'm just like, where did this come from? Where did this insane notion that Will Howard, and look, I get that there's the John Gruden video where he's, oh man, Josh Allen, your height, your weight, your weight to throw. No, stop it right now. I'm helping you out, Steelers fans, because you're going to drive yourself crazy by convincing yourself about this guy. And listen, this is not a knock on Will Howard. I think Will Howard is a good college quarterback. I think that he was a good pick for the Steelers. I even think he was a bit of a steal in the 6th. I thought he should have gone in the 4th because I evaluated him that way. And that's just my personal evaluations. But trying to make him out to be the guy who's the next franchise quarterback and comparing him, I saw people comparing him to Josh Allen, saying, oh, he could just be the next CJ Stroud. No. There's things that those quarterbacks showed for years that Will Howard didn't. And Will Howard was a good college player on a very good college football team and was a cog in the machine and not the thing that led them all the time. Like when we compare him to Josh Allen was leading Wyoming by himself. He did not have Jeremiah Smith catching the ball from him. He did not have Mecca Igbuka catching the ball from him. He didn't have an offensive line just chock full of dudes that are getting ready to go to the NFL. Josh Simmons, a 1st-round pick. He didn't have a defense that could just kill for you. He didn't have 2 running backs that people were arguing should go in the 1st or the 2nd round. There's a lot of things that I think really work for really work for Will Howard, but let's not try to pretend that he is going to be right away the second coming. I know a lot of people always say, well, Chris, you're saying just because he's picked in the 6th round, he can't work. Well, Tom Brady was picked in the 6th round. So I'll have you know that you're, and I'm like, okay, the old Tom Brady thing, like Mel Kiper did that whole thing on draft day. How many other 6th-round quarterbacks can you name that have been drafted since Tom Brady? And I'm going to read off a few names just to get them off, just so you get the point here. You ever hear of a guy named Josh Booty? Of course you didn't. He was picked in the 6th round the year after Tom Brady. Also, Josh Booty is just a hilarious name. That's why I picked that one. Josh Heupel, coach in college football right now. He was a 6th round draft pick that year. Ever heard of JT O'Sullivan, Steve Belisari? Did they ever become franchise quarterbacks? No. If I read off every 6th round quarterback from 2000 to now, most of them you get a couple like, oh, Tyrod Taylor, there's a good one. But again, mid-level backup quarterback, sometimes starter, decent here and there, not franchise quarterback material. Tom Brady is the stab in the dark, the unicorn of picks there. And if you're like, well, you know what? Will Howard, he won a national championship, and that makes him different from all these guys. Okay, cool. You know who also won a national championship and was in the same draft class as Tom Brady? T. Martin. Steelers selected him under Bill Cowher. He was a 5th round pick, and he ended up being a 5th round pick. He's doing all right, he's coaching wise, but was not a franchise quarterback. In general, there are certain traits that you tally up. That if you're NFL teams, you're gambling on, and that's where the value comes in. And that's why Will Howard was valued there. And I'll remind you, a big thing that made Will Howard the prospect that he was his college football playoff run. If you chop off, let's say Ohio State doesn't get into the college football playoffs this year, remember this was the expanded year. You know, if this was the rule, the 4 teams in this year, and Ohio State didn't get a chance to be in it, I don't think Will Howard would have. It would have been rough on Will Howard. He might have gone in the 7th or undrafted, because a lot of people weren't feeling Will Howard until that playoff run where he did play very well. And that was my point in the article, is that, look, making big plays in big moments is really important, at least in my eyes. I know it is for the Steelers, because that's how they evaluate guys. But when we're looking at and we're evaluating the traits, the things that make that, they say, hey, I can pull that from you in college, see that in the pros, and it's going to translate very well, and it won't require me having to reprogram you entirely to do that. Will Howard has some of those things, but there's a reason he didn't get picked in the first round. Like, I saw people saying that, oh, he reads defenses so much better than Lamar Jackson. Get out of here. Lamar Jackson was a Heisman Trophy quarterback who was unstoppable in college and has won 2 MVPs in the pros. Like that's where I'm just like, Steelers fans, stop being delusional. Drink some water, touch some grass, get back into reality here. I think right now, the situation the Steelers have at quarterback, not even dealing with Aaron Rodgers, Mason Rudolph is your starter, Will Howard's your backup. And I think Will Howard that's a perfect person for Will Howard to back up right now. If Aaron Rodgers comes in, we will cross that bridge when he in there. I think he will come in. I think he's going to sign. Don't ask me why he hasn't. No one's trying to get in the mind of that man right now. But I'm telling you right now, I think that Mason Rudolph, he had a lot of those same boxes that Will Howard had. Good size, decent athleticism, not as fast as Will Howard, but you remember that time he trucked the dude in the Lions game back in, what was that, 2021, one of them years? He came in that rainy day in Detroit Lions. He trucked over some DB. Mason Rudolph can move a little bit. He ain't fast, but he ain't immobile. But he had good size. He has a very similar throwing motion. And in college, he was great at making pre-snap reads. If defenses, and I noted this back when we were looking at those draft classes way back when. I remember doing this film study. But when I watched him, if the defense was lined up in a certain way, and it was the way, and that was the play that they were definitely, they were showing cover 2 and they actually were cover 2, Mason Rudolph could pick you apart because he could see it. He could work within the offense. But if you showed cover 2 and switched to cover 3 and you flipped it up a little bit, He very much struggled with that. And that was something that I thought, hey, it's going to take time in the NFL to work through. It has taken time. And I think he's done it well enough to be a solid, viable backup/bridge starting quarterback. Not a franchise guy, but a guy kind of like I'm saying with Tyrod Taylor. And that's where I think Will Howard can get to if he keeps working his game. And there's also the chance that he goes way past that. I'm not saying Will Howard is doomed to be a bad quarterback or a backup quarterback only for the rest of his life. But I am saying that when you're trying to build out, as NFL teams do, you're trying to build the likelihoods, because that's what you're doing. You're gambling on these things. And I think that's part of it, is that these NFL teams and GMs and scouts and all these people, their names are going behind this. And so when they're wrong, that's their careers. If they're wrong about a guy, that could be the thing that gets them fired and makes them lose the entire career that they've been building their whole lives for. Whereas if I'm wrong, I just talk about it on this podcast. I say, hey guys, I got it wrong. If you're wrong, the person at home, you're just like, well, no, and no one will ever know the difference. But that's the difference here is that I think that when you're having to make these decisions and you're putting things together and you're trying to build up the likelihoods of who's going to be good and who's not going to be good and all these different factors, there's certain boxes you got to check. Will Howard checked some of those boxes. And again, this was why I said at the time, if you were watching this show before the draft, I was saying Shedeur Sanders is not a first-round quarterback to me because he doesn't check this box or that box or that box. And to me, I even think Will Howard checked a few more of those boxes for me. And that's why I was like saying, hey, get Will Howard in the 4th round. But trying to extrapolate some highlights where he played really well and saying, oh, yeah, this guy's definitely it. Relax. Take a step back. Look at all of the tape. Look at his bad games too. Because there were plenty of those. And again, the bad tape doesn't define him just like the good tape doesn't only define him. It's all together. But there's a reason why he was a 6th-round pick. And there's also a reason why he can overcome it. I'm just telling Steelers fans, hold your horses. Don't go out there and tripping over yourself. Just try to think that this guy is the next savior at the quarterback position. Because then you're gonna start wanting him to be in there, and then when he makes mistakes, you're gonna blame people that ain't their fault. You're just gonna try to make out this 6th-round quarterback. Why isn't he Josh Allen? That's where we gotta bring it all back. So I try to offer reality checks. I try to offer bringing people to realism. That's what we did with this first segment. But a lot of y'all been calling and asking questions since the draft's been over. We'll get to some of those questions next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you this show is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with you can have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork finds affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're going to continue our show here today. I had to get that off my chest about the Will Howard stuff, man, because, like, again, I'm an optimist. I want to believe. I even pointed out in my film study article, hey, he's good at these things. I like these things, but we gotta always balance it. And that's why I always could include the good with the bad. So let's get to our questions here, because there are some good with the bad. As always, you can call in for this show at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from, keep your question under a minute, and we'll try to get your questions on the show. This first question comes from Joe in Morgantown about why people who are offering their opinions on why the Steelers draft class was a bad one, which seems to be differing from what a lot of people locally feel about it. But here's Joey from Morgantown.
Hey, Chris. This is Joey from Morgantown again. I've been looking at all the grades for the draft, and there's a lot of people grading us really good, but I've been seeing a lot of people grade us like really bad too, which makes no sense to me. But I mean, what do you think that the bad takeaway we could have from this draft class is? Like, because I don't know, there were some picks, like I like Jack Sawyer, value pick like everybody's been saying, but I feel like we needed a corner or some type of secondary player. But yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts. Do you think anybody that went undrafted we should have gotten, or, you know, something like just some thoughts. Have a nice day, Chris.
Thank you, Joe. You have a nice day, too. As always, you can call in like Joey did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. So, Joey, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's always the downsides of the draft. Now, the reason why I've been positive about the draft is because the way I evaluated the draft seems like the way the Steelers evaluated the draft. And that's because I try to do my research to match the way that they evaluate things so I can understand where they're coming from. But for me, I had Derek Harmon, I think, as like my 13th best player in the draft class this year. I had Caleb Johnson as like just outside the top 50. I had Jack Sawyer inside my top 100. Y.A. Black was a key person I had my eye on in the later rounds. Will Howard was a guy I thought should have been a fourth rounder. So like all of those first 5 picks to me were within the right value of what I thought. But why might somebody disagree? Now, let's go over some of those. Now, there's some people like Mel Kiper who gave the Steelers his lowest draft grade in this class. By the way, I always say this too. I do not like grading draft classes until I see how they play out. When I mean play out, I don't even mean their rookie season. I don't mean their second year. I might start to grade a draft class by its third year. But truthfully, to me, it's not until you see that fourth year where people have developed, people have become who they are, they sign their extensions, or they get fifth-year extensions, those types of things, or they get traded. That's when we start to see how good was a draft class really. Because, like, you know, if you had judged Cam Hayward off his first 2-3 years in the NFL, might not be, you're probably thinking, oh man, well, that didn't work out. Then all of a sudden, middle part of his career, he turns into a superstar, and that's where he becomes the Cam Hayward. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of other examples you could go throughout NFL careers and do that for. But I think one of the biggest things that people look at this, if you're going to have a legitimate criticism of this draft class, is that the Steelers did not address their biggest need on the roster, which is a quarterback. And I agree with that. Like hey, they need a quarterback. But for me, it's not just about addressing the needs that you have. It's addressing it with what is readily available. And that's why I did not mark them down for not getting a quarterback in this draft class, because I didn't think the quarterbacks in this draft class were particularly good. Again, I thought this was a good backup quarterback draft class, and they got one of my top backup quarterbacks in this draft class in Will Howard. Now, does that mean that so if some people, but here's the thing, again, the way I saw things, Shedeur Sanders was not a first round quarterback. Seems like a lot of other teams agreed. I honestly didn't think Jackson Dart was a first round quarterback. I thought he'd get picked in the first round, but I didn't have him that way. I don't have him ranked that way. I did think that someone would take him at some point. But looking at how that plays out, that's, sometimes it happens that way. But when it comes to the quarterback position, if you're someone who thinks the Steelers should have gotten a quarterback and they didn't, and some quarterbacks went ahead of the Steelers that you felt were legit first round options, then you could say, I think the Steelers missed on their biggest thing here, which was the quarterback position. They needed a quarterback, and they could have had Shedeur Sanders. And random NFL evaluator who thinks the Steelers draft class was bad. And then if I think Shedeur Sanders was amazing and he didn't pick him, then that's a missed opportunity on their part. But that's often where it comes from. Is some people, they the way they're in tune with the draft, or the way they're in tune with how the prospects should be ranked, they come in at different values, and that's where they'll say, like, you know what? I don't think this was a good draft class. I think that they should have addressed these other things that were really essential, that I think are more important to their roster. Now, again, I often think that a lot of times, those type of criticisms, they come from people outside, not just the organization, but outside of being around the organization a whole lot, because oftentimes you see these assumptions about what the Steelers absolutely need. And like for example, there was a first round need put on offensive tackle in this draft class by some simulators, and I'm like, that's inaccurate. So for me, again, to answer your question, Joey, I wouldn't read too much into bad grades. Again, I'm not into the whole grades thing per se, unless you push me in a corner and you say, you gotta pick a grade, Chris, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll pick a grade. But and that's happened to me before. But to me, this was a draft class that addressed a lot of needs, that checked a lot of boxes, that got a lot of players there. We got to see how they play out. But to me, I think that the way this draft class was assembled was a good way to do it. And are they still missing quarterback? Yep. But guess what? The right opportunities to find the right quarterback, I don't think have been readily available, and the Steelers are trying to navigate their way through that. But what's to happen if the Steelers do get their quarterback for the future? Should Arthur Smith still be the guy coordinating the offense if that new quarterback is achieved next year. I want to talk about that and other things about Arthur Smith right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, continuing our show here. As always, you can call in for the show at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll get to another question here. This one comes from Aaron, all the way out in Johnson City, Tennessee. Aaron, take it away.
Hey, Chris, this is Aaron from Johnson City, Tennessee. And my question is, there's a lot of talk about the quarterback next year. And my question is, depending on the type of quarterback we get, let's say it's Arch Manning or someone in one of those top picks, we're able to get up there. Does that mean that we should look for a different offensive coordinator? Because if some of the things were true, it sounded like Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson didn't get along, partially because they had a difference in opinion of how to run the offense. And obviously we don't want to start off with a new quarterback and be changing offensive coordinators. So let me know what you think, and if so, who do you think would be a good offensive coordinator? Obviously somebody that could be with them for many years to come. So I appreciate your show. Love the Steelers. Let's go.
Appreciate you, Aaron. As always, you can call in like Aaron did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. To get to Aaron, the crux of Aaron's question here, I get what you're saying here about Arthur Smith. Look, Arthur Smith's first year was not great for the Steelers. Now, he did rise the tide a little bit. Like the offense finished in the middle part of the NFL. That was something that hadn't been done in a while. But there were plenty of holes as well. And I think it's reasonable to ask, if you're looking at getting a quarterback next year, trying to make sure that you have the coordinator you want to help develop them. And I do think Arthur Smith is in Pittsburgh for a specific reason. I think that he's in Pittsburgh, one, because he needs opportunity, but two, I think they want him to rebuild the physical style of offense that they saw at Tennessee. I think, which is what they're trying to do with this O-line, with this run game, with Caleb Johnson, and Jalen Warren. I think that's going to be very much a part of what he's doing. But I agree that there should be a bit of a temperament on, or I guess like a control factor placed on whether or not he'll be the OC for the future draft pick. Because here's the other thing: if this offense lights it up with Arthur Smith, then you think, oh yeah, no problem. You want him around to help the quarterback. But I do think that there's a chance that if the Steelers don't see the progress they need to see, they're kind of like, okay, you know what? We do want to make sure that we have an offensive coordinator who is there for whoever the draft pick is next year early on, and having that right, because you want the quarterback to come in, be comfortable, quickly acclimate to their situation, and get moving. And that's where I think that it could be that situation, but it's going to be up to Arthur Smith in this offense. What kind of progress do they show in this offense? Are they able to put up points consistently? Are they able to move the ball consistently? Are they able to create a manageable role for the quarterback position where they don't have to be the savior all the time to make for the team to win games? That's where I think it's going to be interesting to see what Arthur Smith does for this upcoming season for whoever's the quarterback, whether it be Aaron Rodgers, Mason Rudolph, or Will Howard. But I really do think the Steelers have a chance to put some things together on the quarterback side moving forward. Now, to address the part of the question where Aaron asked about how would you handle this as far as the quarterback position, and how would you handle, or who would you replace Arthur Smith if you were to let him go? Remember, I think he's on a 3-year deal. So I think technically it's year 2 and he has one more after that. But if say they were to get rid of a guy, I think that they do have that guy on staff right now. It's Tom Arth at the quarterback's coach. I think that he is the guy that they want to they want to ascend. I've heard really good things about Tom Arth, not even from the Steelers' perspective, just from quarterbacking and what he knows. And I think he was brought to the Steelers to help with the quarterback position and to eventually get there where if they get the quarterback that they really want, the guy that they want to bring in, then he's going to be the guy that he's going to be the guy that might take over the quarterback, the offensive coordinator position to help with the transition of that quarterback to get to understand things now. And again, Tom Arth brought in, he was a pass game specialist for the Chargers in 2022 and 2023. So, he's been a guy who's developed other offense. He's developed passing offense. He worked with Justin Herbert. So, I think that he's going to bring things to the table if, again, and this is a big if when it comes to, if they move on from Arthur Smith here. But I think that that's someone that's certainly on the table right now for the Steelers to consider. But bottom line, I think we got to see how this year works for Arthur Smith, because to give him full credit and to be fair to him entirely, the offensive line did not play well through the second half of the season, and that led to some big issues. And they need the offensive line to play well. And to me, that's just as important as the quarterback position right now, maybe a bit more, because I think that could be the strength of the team if they get it right. But they have to get it right. They have to get this run game going. They need the tackles kicking butt. They need the guards kicking butt. They need Zach Frazier kicking butt, and they need to do it in a coalesced fashion where they're able to all be on the same page, working together. If they do those things, I think it becomes that much easier for whoever you want to put at the quarterback position and moving forward. So all that to say, I really do think that it's a good question, Aaron. I do think that it's something that they'll keep in mind, but a big part of what will keep Arthur Smith around or what will end up not keeping him around is just the way that he gets this offense going and the smoothness he creates for the quarterback position. Because again, the whole point of the offense right now with the quarterback position is to have it not be the controlling factor of the offense, because that's not the strength of this team. So if I'm if I'm the Steelers, I'm trying to position it right now where Arthur Smith can either figure it out and create a dynamic offense that requires a lot of attention from defenses and is using quarterbacks, and then whoever you want to bring in next year from the NFL draft can just be plugged and played into that system. Great. That's awesome. Perfect. But the odds of that happening, not so sure. So I'm waiting to see how Arthur Smith does. But if it's struggle busting it for another year and you're headed and the offense is still, in the middle of the pack or hasn't taken any steps forward, doesn't have anything, a whole lot of things building, then I would start to be like, okay, there's questions there about Arthur Smith, but let's let him cook. Let's let him get used to things. Because Arthur Smith is still, I think, getting things ready for the upcoming year. But we'll see, what kind of quarterback brings it. But I think if they do get a quarterback and that becomes the new focus of the team, I'd look for Tom Arth to ascend very quickly and become that OC. Because they want when they have a young QB on the roster who's going to get a lot of play, they're going to want a young QB coach who can help manage that situation. So Tom Arth would be my pick there, but certainly very good question there, Aaron, as far as how they'll handle it moving forward. But again, thanks for tuning in to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media, same handle everywhere at Carter Critiques. You can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here every day, Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your Monday through Friday episodes. We'll see you here tomorrow on the Locked On Steelers podcast.